Welcome to the EV Fleet Roadmap, a Navistar podcast on your fleet's path towards zero emissions. I'm your host, Jason Morgan, and joining me today is Cassie McDonald, grant writer for International Trucks and IC Bus. Cassie, great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're talking EV funding, and I'm excited because it can seem unapproachable. You talk about grants and funding, and it all sounds great with big numbers. I mean, we got, what, more than $1 billion on the table for EV usage, with more programs on the way. But how do fleets get involved? How do we make this approachable?
Absolutely. So grants can be an intimidating word. It can be a scary word, but really, if you have trusted advisors within International and IC Bus, we're able to help kind of filter through and navigate those terms with you. There is a lot of money out there. It's just finding the right avenue for you and your vehicles. Right. And that's where we can kind of come in and help you out.
Okay, let's dig into that a little bit because we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which I'm sure everybody has heard of and no one really knows what it means. So what is available for fleets that want to put EVs to use?
Right, so there's different avenues. You can do traditional grants that have funding. Okay. We have tax incentive and tax rebates like you were talking about. So you can get up to a certain percentage or dollar amount per electric vehicle that you purchase within the year, which is a great incentive for businesses.
Right.
There's rebate grants, there's just quite a few different options depending on where you're located in the country, where you domicile your trucks and buses, where you're driving, what kind of truck you have, what kind of bus do you have. So there's a lot of different options. It's very individualized.
Okay. How does that work? So EVs is a big topic too. Trucks and buses, commercial vehicles are a component of that. Are there any differences there in terms of the tax incentives versus grants versus other avenues?
Yeah, I would say there is quite a bit of difference, especially by state.
Okay.
I would say right now, federally in particular, there are quite a few more opportunities for electric school buses because of a push by regulations from the EPA. Right. But we're seeing more truck funding come available, and that is still out there as well. So it's not like there aren't opportunities for truck. There's just a bigger push right now from the EPA in general for school buses. But again, you can narrow it down by your zip code even to see what kind of opportunities are available in just your area. You know, if you're in the Tacoma, Washington area, you're going to have a different incentive option than you are if you're in Seattle.
Okay. Interesting. Well, and you mentioned by state and location here. How widespread is this impact? We talk a lot about California, but is this across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in pretty much every state. If they don't have their own incentives or grants yet, they are all applicable for the federal opportunities. So even if you live in a state that doesn't have specific opportunities to your area, you still have a handful of opportunities that you can do because you're in this country. Okay,
and now we're talking about the vehicles, we're talking about the actual physical trucks, the buses, right? But then there's infrastructure that goes along with that, and that's a separate thing, right? I mean, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, so some of the grants and incentive opportunities will also provide funding to let you kind of buy some of those chargers, help with some of the infrastructure setup. It's, again, very dependent on the grants. Sometimes you can get up to 80% for a charger. Sometimes you can get up to 80% for a truck. Sometimes both. Sometimes just one or the other.
I see.
I think this is an important part for getting in now for grants as well, because we are seeing funding for that infrastructure piece.
Right.
And I think that's such an overwhelming component because you have to find a place to install the chargers, keep them, repair them, and we can make that less overwhelming if we have those incentives and those grants. And we do have those out there. And I think that's, like any regulation that comes up, getting in on the foundation setup, and you'll have more opportunities to get more funding. And I'm guessing that we'll see a little bit of a decrease in infrastructure funding in the future because they'll have wanted you to invest in it early.
I see.
So now's the time to, again, really get into what opportunities you're eligible for now.
Right.
So you don't miss out on the biggest amount of money.
Right, kind of catching that wave a little bit, right? Okay, so when we talk about charging infrastructure, we talk about all the new partners we're working with too. I mean, you mentioned the equipment. I got to get the charging equipment in place as well, but I'm working with the utility. What role do they play in the grant funding world?
So we're seeing a lot more of utilities needing to kind of sign off in that the partnership is agreed to before the grant is even submitted.
Oh, I see.
Because you want to make sure that you have a partner who understands, is knowledgeable, is trained correctly, and what your needs are for electric vehicles. So it's important to have those relationships taken care of, and thankfully that's another thing with our strategic partnerships throughout the country that we can help facilitate if you don't already have those relationships. They can be a little hard to hunt down,
Right.
but if you're looking at installing infrastructure, you need a site visit ahead of time by this utility company, and there's sometimes those utility companies can find out things that are better than you thought they were, or that maybe you need a little bit more attention to a certain area. We're seeing more utility companies as well offer their own kind of grant or rebate or incentive program out there, so that's always a possibility too.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, so, and you said I need the partnership to be in place before I get the money. Because we've talked a lot about the podcast of course I need the infrastructure plan before I get the vehicles. Somehow there's even a more immediate feeling if I know I'm not going to get my money until I have that relationship in place.
Right, and I think that can add a level of stress to fleets. We need to have everything basically done before they get the money. But it will help you in the long run to have that organized. You have a plan in place, you have your strategic partnerships, you have your trusted advisors. So when you get the money, you can go.
Right.
And that's really helpful. And, things will already be in process, and that's where you can go. So you don't have to keep adding years on to your waiting program for that.
Right, and on the International Truck and IC Bus side, I mean, it's all a cohesive team there. So I'm already working with the group to get the charging in place, to get the equipment spec'd out and where I'm going to need it. And then the grant comes in, and it's not like a new thing for you all. You're aware of it.
Absolutely. We work directly with our sales team, who work with our dealers, who are directly talking to operations, make sure we have the lineup, can we get the trucks available in time, whatever that looks like. It's going to go through the whole line at International and IC. It'll be all covered.
Okay, well, let's back up for a second and let's pretend, we don't pretend very hard, that I know nothing about anything in terms of money and I don't understand it. And we've talked about grants and tax incentives. Can you just give me a very basic version of here's what a grant does and here's when you get the money and here's when the tax incentive happens and how that impacts you financially? Can you give me just a basic rundown of that?
So I'm going to split the grants actually into two different kinds of grants.
Okay.
So we're going to have a traditional grant, I will call it, where you have to kind of write up your process. I think this is the grant that comes to mind when people think of grants. So you have to write out a narrative or essay kind of portion just to say why you're committed to this project, what you're going to do, and how you're going to keep it going.
I see.
And then if you are accepted and awarded that grant, then you receive a check at some point post-award.
Okay.
There's also rebate grant opportunities, which we're seeing more of because they're more simple and they take less time for whoever's administering the funds to also have to go through. So, for example, the EPA has a Clean School Bus Grant federally available. Round 3 just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I think, actually. You only had to fill out a rebate form for that, and once you purchase the bus, you send in the receipt. Then you get the money back for that. So some of those rebate programs, once you commit, you have the order, you're able to get the rebate fund. Sometimes they can already see the purchase order, so you can get the money while they're finishing assembling the bus or truck. Tax incentives, it's tax season, right? So you have to fill out, you have to go through and list out your purchases, everything with that, and then there'll be an eligible form there for you. Okay. They're still working out some of the details for that just because it is such a new incentive program, but it's still available for everyone to use.
Right. No, well, and you make a good point. Tax season, so if I buy now, that'll impact me next tax season. So I'm looking at 25, not the taxes that I'm having a lot of fun filling out right now.
Right. Yeah. This will be for vehicles you purchased in 2024. You can look at that for your 2025 tax season. And then that's a really great way to also package that overall bus purchase or truck purchase. Here we got a discount on the chargers because we got a grant awarded to us. We got a rebate because we purchased this vehicle, so we got money back on this purchase. And then we'll also get money back because we'll get a tax incentive for purchasing the equipment or vehicle.
Okay, I see. So you can lump it all in. You can hit these multiple times.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing about grants as well is we use the term stacking or stackable.
Okay.
You can actually use multiple grants sometimes for the same vehicle, same fleet, same charging program. Usually can't use 3 different federal programs, but if you have a federal program, state program, local program, and then you can use your tax incentives as well. Okay. So you're really able to kind of try and get as much as you can with that, and and we can do that, which is really helpful.
Okay, so this is just money that I'm given if I'm awarded the grant, right? What strings are attached here? There's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
No, there's always strings, and I think that can get overwhelming. Most grants will require reporting up to 5 or more years after you receive the funding.
Okay.
They want to make sure you're sticking to what you said you were going to do, that you're taking care of it properly, that you've, for example, if you were able to purchase a vehicle, you had to scrap a vehicle. They want the pictures and the proof that you've scrapped it responsibly by those regulations. And so we have to actually take physical pictures of how that works and what that looks like to translate it. It's with federal grants specifically, there's going to be a little bit more strings attached because it's taxpayer money that's funding these programs. And so they need to do extra due diligence to make sure that the taxpayer money is going to where they said it was going to go to.
Right.
Other programs vary, but there's almost always going to be some sort of reporting element for it.
Okay.
But again, if you work with a zero emissions team and trusted advisors, you'll be able to help navigate and even what to expect when that comes down.
Right. So on the international trucks and IC bus side, this isn't you write my grant and then we succeed and I get paid and I buy my trucks and I'll, off we go. I'm going to continue working with the team.
Absolutely. Okay. And we have a really great, well-rounded team. We have teams specific for charging. So getting them in earlier while we're talking about grants and where you can put that charger. How many do you think you actually need? What is the maintenance for that? What does that look like? Right. And then talking about the components of the actual vehicle purchase. So we have a really great team that can help with every aspect of this and moving forward.
Right. Well, and we've talked a lot about that on this podcast from the operations side. I think the financial side, getting help with that is really interesting. I mean, even going back to it, right, the reporting up to 5 years, I'm going to try to apply it now. Is that only in a traditional grant where I've written out, okay, this is my plan and this is what I'm going to do? Or is there reporting after the rebate? Because I felt like that was maybe just, okay, I've made the purchase and here's my rebate. What's that reporting like?
The catch up on grants is it's going to depend on each grant. Okay. But that's why you have people like me and our grant team that can help you with this. Some of the rebates will require very simple reporting. How many miles are you getting per year on the vehicle? What is the charging life? Okay. Did you scrap this vehicle properly?
Right.
We need to see evidence of that. They give you a certain time. Like I think there's usually a year or 2 years to be able to scrap the vehicle before you move forward. So each grant's going to have a different qualification system. Even within the EPA or the Department of Energy or the Department of Transportation, they could be releasing funding under different names, and the applications are all going to look very different. It doesn't mean it's not impossible. It doesn't mean it's too complicated. We just have to read through and help understand what we're going to need for each one and if this is going to work for your specific fleet. Right.
Okay, so if I'm a fleet, whether let's say either on the truck side or the bus side, right, the school bus side, I want to get involved in this. I want to have the conversation. What do I need to do on my side to prepare and get my info all lined up to make sure that I can help you do your job?
Absolutely. The earlier the conversation, the better.
Okay.
So a lot of times for federal grants in particular, we may know about it, that it's coming out for a year in advance, but we don't actually gain access to the application itself until 30 days before the due date. So you may need to do a lot of prep work up to that, and then we have a very limited amount of time to actually enter in all of the information and application process. So starting conversations now is always a great idea, because then we can also tell you what we think is coming up, what you could be eligible for, what to prepare for your fleet. Some examples I think of what you might need is if you're scrapping vehicles, for example, we need a copy of the actual title for that vehicle scanned in and sent to the funder. Okay. So if you're scrapping 25 buses, that's 25 individual titles. Okay. That can take some time to gather. Maybe you have a central office that has all the titles and you need someone to go find those specific 25 titles, scan them in one by one. That just takes time. Most things with grants aren't incredibly difficult. They're just time consuming. Right. And so we just want to make sure people have enough time to be able to take advantage of these opportunities.
Right. Well, and the documentation you need that to be in line. On the, I mean, you mentioned that you know about the grant, then you have a 30-day window deadline to get. How competitive is it? I mean, to your start now point, I mean, if I'm a fleet doing it, how many other fleets am I competing with? And I want to win that grant, right?
So it depends on the grant. Some of the rebates will be a lottery system. Some will be a competitive process. Some will be, if you're in the zip code, we were going to spend this money until it's gone.
Okay, interesting.
So there's a lot of first come, first served opportunities out there right now. The state was given, Wisconsin, for example, was given a specific amount of funding for these 3 years. Yeah. Then they will spend it until it's gone. Doesn't mean it'll be here 2 years from now. It could be gone in first year and a half, or it could be there till the very end. So just getting in earlier is always a better idea. And I think as regulations evolve over time, even if your state isn't requiring as much as other states, it's going to come down the pipeline most likely in the future. And so the more you can set yourself up for success and to get just some financial relief for that, the better.
Right. Okay, so I know what I have to do on my side. What about on the international truck and IC bus side? How do you help customers? What should I expect to see, on a day-to-day or month-to-month or even year-to-year with some of this reporting basis? What should I expect?
Yeah, from a grant perspective, we are able to help with a couple of different tools that we help project lead, and then we also have our internal team. We are developing a database with a third party to help make sure we're looking at all the funding sources that are available. It's hard to keep track of. They're changing all the time. Something that was available 2 weeks ago maybe is gone already. We don't know. And so we're tracking that constantly to make sure we can help you understand where the funding could be coming from. And where it could be coming from in the future if it's not available right now. So we're able to help outline opportunities that you may not have heard of, or opportunities that you have heard of but you don't know the details on, to see if you're eligible. So we're able to help with that. We're able to help with the application process itself. What information do you need? How specific does it need to be? What kind of documentation do we need to go with that? Who needs to sign off on what? We help organize, assemble, and do some of the writing as well. And we have another partner that's helping, just because we have a huge dealer network, thankfully. But we want to make sure everyone can get the help they need, so we don't want to hold anyone up. So we'll be working with dealers and our partners to make sure that this gets done. And then we'll also talk about reporting and how to set yourself up with that.
Right. Well, and even as you're talking about it here, just the scope of it, any fleets think, oh, you know what, I'll just figure that out. When the time comes, I'll figure it out. But to your point, if you don't start early, there might not be any money left. And yeah, there's no way that, the fleet's job is full-time running vehicles profitably, right? Not understanding the grant world, which sounds complicated, but you've made it approachable here.
Yeah, it can be a very simple process. But if you're like, oh, this is a rebate form, it'll take me like a week. And you log in and your SAM.gov account doesn't work. And that's not an easy or fast process to get back into the swing of things. And so we're able to do some of those applications on people's behalf. Or, oh, I didn't know I needed titles for all these, and now I have 8 hours before the deadline, and I'm in a different state than wherever this is. So it's just having those conversations, and just at least having those conversations with us and your trusted advisor. That's what's going to put you a little bit above the game, so you don't have that stress that I think is also always associated with grants, is that deadline stress that you have to face, and we can help alleviate that.
Cassie, thanks so much for joining us, opening this world up for grants and funding. I learned a lot. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I know it's a complicated world. It can be an overwhelming world. Why is it worth your time? But that's why we're here. This is what we specialize in, and we're going to be here for the long run to help you through this and make sure you're getting whatever help you can to make sure we're switching over to electric.
Perfect. Thanks. And thank you all for joining us. Be sure to check out the International Trucks and IC Bus Zero Emissions page. Go to the EV Fleet Roadmap page for even more episodes. And hey, if you're going to ACT Expo, be sure to swing by the Navistar booth and say hi. Thanks again for watching.